Hi guys, welcome to the channel. As you can see, I'm not alone. I'm never alone this year, which is great because I'm with the beautiful Kia, who happens to be my new housemate. So you'll be seeing a lot of us this year. And yeah, this year is all about creating content that is useful. I really think we plan to just create content that is insightful and that is helpful to you on your journey, whether it's health and wellness, whether you're making career choices. We're here for it all, and yeah, let's get into it. So the main idea behind this video is to really basically just talk about how we ended up moving to London, what was the process. And I've shared my story in dribs and drabs, I think, but I haven't. My context of arriving in London was always a pre-COVID context, and so when Gia and I were talking and we were reflecting on just how we got here, I think it was very evident that our stories, although are similar, are also very different. And so we thought we'd share our perspectives on how we arrived in this country pre-COVID and during COVID in Gia's context.
Yep. Hi guys. So as Khosi has said, I am Gia, and I am really looking forward to our conversation ahead. And yeah, we're just here, man, to impart our knowledge and our experience, and that's it.
That is literally it, guys. We're so excited to be here. The disclaimer is that we have arrived in this country in the context of two people who are newly qualified CASAs. So this video is going to be very biased in that this is our story and this is how we got here, and that is because we got here via the SAICA qualification. So if you have questions about moving to a new country to work as another profession, unfortunately our knowledge is limited in that regard. All I can say is update your LinkedIn, try to find recruitment agencies, but this is literally going to be our story and we can only tell our story. Cool. Glad that's out of the way. Okay, so what's my story? My story is I moved here a year ago. Back then, literally a year ago, it's wild that this time last year in Jan though, that COVID was really not a thing. It was a thing, but it was not a thing. Like it wasn't drastic, it wasn't apparent, and we didn't know that this would be the end result. So I was approached by a recruitment agency because after qualifying as a newly qualified, eligible to register as a chartered accountant, I updated my LinkedIn, and so that is like literally the one piece of advice I'm sure Gia, you also agreed, like
the very same thing. I literally updated my LinkedIn the day after I passed my last board exam, which was APC. By Monday, the recruitment agency had already sent me an inbox.
They moved that quick. So same thing with me. As soon as I updated my LinkedIn, I was approached by a number of recruitment agencies, and so that's how essentially the process started. And because I knew that I wanted to be in the country, I sort of went along with it, and they assisted me with my visa. And because you also have to do a TB test and an English assessment test. But literally you have to do a TB test before you enter the country. You have to do the NARIC.
English assessment, basically, that you know English sufficiently for the country.
Strange, right? Anyway, and then the visa. So that was all taken care of. Oh, the visa was taken care of by the company, but I had to pay for my English assessment test, which is something that you pay for. You can do the English you can do the English assessment test, or you can get your degree sort of assessed, because technically the argument is, right, if you've been taught, you've done your degree in English, then it makes sense, then you know English, then you can enter the US. So I paid for that, but all of it is refundable. And then they did the visa, and so that was my process of getting here. And then I paid for my own flights as well, which was reimbursed. And yeah, it was all good and well. I think my story is pretty vanilla in the sense that, because like things weren't what they are now, and I think that's why it's so important to have Kia as part of this conversation, because we did the same thing, but our stories are so different, and it's important for you to understand like what the differences are between then and now. And so yeah, that's my process. Kia.
So mine was quite different in the sense that when I applied, already the COVID was being announced. Already when I had my interview, it was like, oh my word, we might go into lockdown. Other countries are getting into lockdown, but it was a lot of uncertainty. And by the time I applied, I had to wait a good 6 months before I got the good go ahead to say you've got the job. So there was a very long wait, I must say. So it was very different because usually you would know within a week. So that was the very first thing. I had a whole 6 to 9 month wait for it, but eventually got the job, and that was great. However, what we need to know is that the companies that we move over with do the whole move differently. So with my company, basically they said that you need to cover your own costs until you get here, and then they only get reimbursed once you have arrived. So that meant that all the money that you had to pay out for the visa came out of my own pocket. It was quite a lot of money. It's something that one needs to plan for, because as you go along, like Khosi said, there's a TB test you have to do. That's something you have to pay for. There's a English assessment you have to do. That's something you have to pay for. And then you have to pay for the visa. And then there's also national health insurance.
Oh, yeah.
So it was quite a lot of costs. But when you plan for it, and you've got savings, parents that are there, there's always resources. I mean, it's going to be reimbursed as soon as you arrive. But I think the most important thing was for me to know how much is it gonna cost initially, because it was a bit overwhelming at first. But I think because I had the time to plan, I knew, okay, cool, that will work. But also the visa process had to start quite early. Yeah, I had to start quite early. I was moving over in Jan, so I started my visa process in October already, because there was lockdown. So lockdown meant that things aren't moving as fast as they should. I was waiting for a post from the UK, which was the English assessment, and I waited for that for quite some time. And it shouldn't be the case if it wasn't because of COVID and lockdown, but because of that, the mail got lost in South Africa at some point, and then I had to try tracking it. They couldn't track it, so it was just a lot. And I think because I did things on time, it wasn't a train smash as much, but yeah, I had to leave some time apart between me getting my visa, me planning for the move and all of that. But yeah, that was just the process, the beginning of the process.
So what would you say is a big difference, I think, compared to sort of pre-COVID moving to a new country versus moving to a new country during the pandemic?
Okay. I think the biggest thing was just the preparation of, once I had the visa, that was fine. But the preparation of getting to the actual country. Firstly, I had to book a flight. So flights were very, very uncertain at the time. I checked different airlines and it was just so weird. I even called the airline before I booked my flight to say, listen, I see there's a flight at 3 p.m. and another one at 7 p.m. What's going on? And they told me, no, the one that's earlier has been confirmed by the government, and then the one that's later hasn't been confirmed yet. So I then went on to book my flight on the one that was confirmed by the government. Because remember, there's like those repatriation flights and all of that. So I had to ensure that I'm booking a flight that's actually going to leave South Africa and get to the UK.
Because wow, flights were getting cancelled. It was just touch and go. At some point, I didn't even know. I wasn't sure I was going to make it to the UK, because I was just like, woo, it's tough. It was literally,
really tough.
I think, a movie. But
yeah, so I think the biggest thing I had to do was just ensuring that I call the airline and find out what is going on with these flights and book the one that is already confirmed by the government. So that was the first thing, so booking the flight. The second thing was actually preparing to get to the UK. So at the time, the UK had gotten into a higher tier in their lockdown, and also South Africa was also getting a bit tricky because everything was just rising, the cases were rising. So then there was this rule of that you have to isolate for 10 days before you can move around in the new country. So then that meant I need to have accommodation sorted. So that was a bit of a tough one, and I think because I had Khosi, man, that made my life easier. I mean, I had to ensure that I had my place ready for me as soon as I arrived, or I would have had to book a hotel, Airbnb or something like that. But because everyone was moving at the time, it was very difficult to find an Airbnb or a hotel that is reasonably priced for you to stay in for 10 days. So luckily with that, we ensured that we had our lease agreement and our apartment ready for us, and paid the deposit and the rent.
It's another cost, right? Because wow.
We had to pay deposit and the rent for the first month. But I think it was very great because we ensured that our move-in date was a few days before I had to arrive. So yeah, having the accommodation sorted is very important. So there's a cost involved with that. And there's a bit of admin. Yeah, there's a bit of admin there because you have to prove that you're actually coming to the country, that you're gonna have enough money to pay the rent. So a lot of that was dealt with the month before I came. So I didn't leave it for the last week or so. So yeah, that was very difficult. But having the accommodation sorted and knowing that for the 10 days of my isolation I have somewhere to stay was very helpful. That was very helpful. Oh yeah, and there was a COVID test.
Oh yes, how can we forget the COVID test? The COVID test. How soon did you have to do the COVID test?
So I had to do the COVID test 72 hours before the flight. So you had to have done it maybe 3 days before you go on your flight, and they're very strict about the number of hours. So I had to do that. And also you must remember that COVID is a bit tricky because it was December in South Africa. We were having a lot of family gatherings, seeing friends, and also because I was about to leave, everyone wanted to like spend some time. But I had to self-isolate for the last 2 weeks before leaving South Africa.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I had to make the conscious decision to do so because I obviously didn't want to risk it and then get COVID and then now I can't fly over.
I know. I guess that's the difficult part because with me, I didn't have to take those precautions, but because you know you're leaving a country and you need to be in a certain country by a certain time because you're starting your job, you have to be careful that you don't contract your virus because you need to take the test, you need to be in the flight, and you need to be in the country by a certain date. And I think, wow, that is...
No, that was very, very hectic, especially because you're trying to say goodbye to everyone, but unfortunately everything had to be done virtually. But that's the nice thing about technology, I guess.
And like we take it for granted as well, like there's, you know, technology, but at the same time you want to say bye and like, wow, I didn't realize that. That takes discipline because I was in South Africa as well, and although I didn't contract the virus, I don't think I was as careful as we were. And you know, the Lord, luckily nothing went wrong and I was able to board my flight. But I think those are the sort of precautions that you know one has to take. And I think the theme that stuck out for me in what you were saying is that preparation is key. Just in, you know, you're moving into a different country, that on its own, like the magnitude of it is like really, it's a big deal. But just I think if you're planning a big move, it's important to plan ahead and to know what costs are going to come your way and to just be organized, because now more than ever things are taking longer to process, and things are it's just a different time. And I think if you're organized and you know things like leases and visa and you know you're speaking to people, and I guess that's why we have this platform, so that you know what's happening and what are the things that you have to consider when you move. And so, in closing, because we don't want the video to be long, what are sort of, let's leave some pearls of wisdom about your experience of moving. I know it's only been two weeks,
couple of days,
you know, but just in the transition, in the moving process, whether it's before, whether it's during, whether that's now, what would be sort of a pearls of wisdom to share on, just to help someone who wants to get started on the process?
I think you go first.
Okay. I mean, have I said this before? I don't know. What are my pearls of wisdom? I think I've sort of alluded to it earlier, and that is just because a lot of the costs you have to incur by yourself before you get reimbursed when you get to your job. I think it's very important to save up, you know, when you can. Know already, like a year from now, this is the plan. You know the costs. Know that there's going to also be hidden costs. Know that even for your new apartment, you know, some companies offer to give you accommodation, some don't. You know, ask for things like that. Ask what's going to happen, and if you don't know whether or not they're going to cover, just have things in place, like have a tenancy agreement that you're going to, you know, sign, or whatever the case may be. And if so, also have your deposit, because it's going to be that month's rent as a deposit, and then you pay so it's basically like 2 months rent, and it's very expensive to rent in London. But yeah, I think just be prepared to pay, because obviously our currency isn't as strong as the pound, but just be prepared and know that you will obviously start to, you know, find your feet and, you know, make up the money, but it costs a lot moving. But yeah, be prepared.
Awesome. I think from me, it's a very similar theme, but it's more about your career. So plan well in advance. I think one of the biggest things I learned just from last year in itself, there was COVID, yes, but then apart from COVID being there, you need to plan ahead. You need to kind of know what the outlook is on your career. I mean, I started quite early looking for a job for the following year, and I thought it was quite crazy at the time, but I look back now and I'm like, that is actually what I needed at the time. And you just need the time to ensure that things fall in place. And when you set your goals, you know that I want to be at a certain point in the next few years, in the next year or so. So you need to start making the steps to get there. And that's the biggest thing for me. Just plan well in advance. Set those goals. Give yourself some deadlines, and it's really a practical thing to do. I know we always say set goals, achieve them, and all those stuff, but honestly, I think I just saw it happen and just come alive right in front of my eyes when I implemented all those things. And I think, just like Khosi said, prepare well in advance as well, and just ensure that you have all the information you need. And we have all the resources around us. We really, really do. It's just a matter of us just tapping into it and just implementing all those things in our lives.
I love that so much. That's so wise. Yeah. Ooh, update your LinkedIn as well.
Yes.
I think I said it earlier, but update your LinkedIn. It doesn't matter whether or not you want to move or not, or I think it's really like we're always updating our Instagrams and our Twitters and whatever, but it's so important to just update your LinkedIn, because you never know who's going to reach out, and you never know where you're going to find yourself, especially if you already have plans to move to another country. But anyway, that is just a little nugget that I want to throw in there. But yeah, guys, thank you if you're still watching. Wow, thank you for being with us, and we will see you on the next video. Okay, bye.